Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary O'Connor with the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. On behalf of Alaska Public Media, thank you for watching Hangar Flying. This evening, we are very happy to have Ross Nixon back as our guest. Ross is the author of a new book called Finding Carla, the story that forever changed aviation search and rescue. Welcome back, Ross.
Hi, Mary. It's good to be back.
So we've been having a conversation about the story of Carla in the book, and her family was in an airplane that crashed. After the crash, searchers went out looking for the family, and they knew in general where the airplane might be, but they never found them in time to rescue them. Can you talk about flight plans, and were they on a flight plan, and how might that have helped or hindered the search?
Sure. Well, you know, this situation here, again, it was a flight from Portland down through Oregon to Medford and then over to Redding, California. And they did file a flight plan. You know, when the pilot left Portland, he called up the flight service in Salem and filed, you know, Redding and then down to Sacramento to San Francisco. And they did go down on the leg between Medford and Redding, California. The plane iced up, put it down in the mountains. Everybody survived. And they were a little ways off the airway, and I believe it was because he was so high up when he iced up. You know, he might have tried to get that thing down and got a little ways off course. But other than that, you know, they, in their notes and the diaries that they left behind, they were wondering why nobody was looking for him, because, you know, they were saying we were on a flight plan. There's Omnis, you know, what they called VORs back then, and you know, air bases all around us. How come no one's looking for us? And it sounds like the search efforts at the time, they were based on some budding technology, you know, looking at some weather radar and stuff, and people decided that a Cessna 195 couldn't have flown as far south of Medford as these folks made it. And so a lot of the searching was up on the northern end of their route. And then, you know, so that was one of the problems. And then the problem was that, you know, again, they deviated a little bit, I think, because they had to put it down and he was iced up. They described being iced up without control, so he got a little ways off the airway. And then I think that the weather was so bad that it complicated the factors of, you know, really doing a good airway search. And when I put this together, that was one of the hardest things to do, was to come up with any CAP records. They just really didn't exist. And the best I could find is that there was a C-45, you know, Beechcraft Air Force that took off from the Hamilton Air Base, and they did an exact route search. You know, they flew from, you know, Hamilton, got up there to Sacramento, Redding, and flew it. But, you know, when you read the diary and you look at the weather, I don't think that anyone was able to see much for a long time because the weather was just so bad. There had been a route search done by some Grumman Albatross, you know, SA-16s out of Hamilton Air Base too, and you know, those are some high-flying, big old twins, and then, you know, they had to import searchers for this area too, because the CAP bases were all, you know, usually in the mountains. They just didn't have a lot of airports, so there weren't, you know, so a lot of the CAP people were from elsewhere, so maybe not that familiar with the airways and the route. And that could have complicated it a little bit, but it seemed to me that most, you know, everybody just sort of had this idea that the plane, you know, would have gone down further north than where it did. And, you know, the fact that this guy made it, if he would have just been a little bit higher, you know, 500 feet higher and a quarter mile to the west, he would have, you know, cleared the last peak in the Trinity Mountains, and he would have been over the big flats there of California, and he probably would have survived this event. So those are some of the things about the flight plan and complicating factors. So
basically, though, what I'm hearing is that a flight plan isn't a fail-proof way to ensure that a search and rescue operation will take place if there is a crash.
No, it's not at all. It's a good idea. You know, it's a tool to use, and it's one of the cards you can use and play, but I think it's a good idea to have, you know, survival gear, have other ways to communicate. You know, we have different technology now than we did back in 1967, and so there's things you can add to it.
Sure, like satellite
And,
tracking devices and
Yeah, you know, the spider tracks and, you know, radio or sat phones, you know, different types of PLBs. I mean, those are all things that can help reinforce the flight plan. And then, you know, and really sticking with your flight plan, I think, is huge as much as possible. If you need to divert, you know, usually you can get high enough to talk to somebody and let them know that you're changing your plan.
exactly.
And, yeah.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for being our guest on Hangar Flying. You've done a fantastic job in telling a very difficult and heartbreaking story. And we look forward to talking more about how we can prevent this from hopefully ever happening again. Thank
All right.
you.
Well, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching Hangar Flying. Please tune in to our next show where we'll be speaking with Ross Nixon again about some ways to decrease search and rescue time. Until next time, fly safely.